Happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome to WWT Live. And while we are 5 days away from All in London, I got 2 words for you. We believe.
Howdy, folks. This is Willow Nightingale, and you are watching Women's Wrestling Talk.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling network on the planet.
Happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome to another edition of WWT Live as part of Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling network on the planet. I am the guy they call the Professor, Teflon G, GB, whatever you feel like calling me. Gerard is perfectly fine because really there's a lot to talk about today, as there always is in the space of pro wrestling. We are 5 days away from All In. We're going to get into that. And Mercedes Mone is talking again. I think you guys will be very, very interested in what she has to say. We'll get into all of that, but I am not alone. I think I've got like the cast of Avengers hanging out with me today. If you need proof of that, we start with an elected official. I mean, there are conventions happening all over the place, but he has found time to be here with us. Of course, that is the Councilman Pharaoh. How are you, kind sir?
Say his name and he appears. The council is here. I am doing well. Great to have you back, Professor. How are you today on this Wednesday?
I'm doing well. I cannot complain. It's good to be here. We're getting ready for obviously a very busy week and a half in the space of pro wrestling. But these days, when is it not busy in pro wrestling, right?
Very true.
Like that's the way that it is. And of course, the other half of the most electrifying tag team in all of digital entertainment is here. And that, of course, is Honey. Wrestling with Honey's in the building. How are you?
I am doing well on this Wednesday. It is the middle of the week, and I don't even know where to begin. So much to cover. So excited to see you guys.
Absolutely. It's great to have you. Have you recovered from the Fanatic Fest?
I'm still semi-recovering. Not enough sleep. Never enough.
I get it. People don't understand big weekends like that where you're covering and you're doing things. They're exciting, they're exhilarating, but when you come down, it's like, whoa.
Oh my God. It's a hell of a crash. But it was so worth it. So much fun.
Absolutely. Your footage, by the way, was incredible. The reel you did from a recap, I was like, ooh, yes. Very well done.
Had to flick it up. That phone was out every 5 seconds, man. Every time I looked up, there was somebody bum rushing through the place with security or somebody somewhere to be, to try to catch them, It was so much fun. Such a great time. I can't wait for another one.
Awesome sauce, and I know there's supposed to be more coming, so that's going to be really cool. It's going to be really, really cool. So we also have the newest member of our squad hanging out with us, really excited. And of course, it's AEW Day, so no surprise that she's hanging out with us. Courtney is in the building. How are you, Courtney?
Hello. Happy Wednesday. I am excited. Wednesday. We're halfway through the week. A lot of stuff has happened in wrestling, but that's how it is, 24/7. It's always something happening.
You better believe it. There's always something happening. How are you doing? You doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. I can't complain. I'm getting nice weather here in New Jersey for the first time in a while. So I'm excited, and I'm almost ready for summer to be over because I'm ready for fall season to start.
Well, fall feels like it's on the way. These last few mornings, certainly here in Atlanta, have been much cooler than they normally are. And I'm like, I see you, fall. I see you.
She's coming around the mountain.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you who's definitely coming around the mountain and who will probably have no mercy when they do that. And that will be the brand new #1 contender for the NXT Championship, Joe Hendry. Last night, it became official. He won a triple threat match to become the #1 contender for the NXT Championship. So let's get into it because, we have been talking really since the start of summer about this partnership between NXT and TNA, and it's produced some really, really cool moments. Councilman, let's start with you. How significant of a moment do we have right now with Joe Hendry as the new #1 contender for the NXT Championship?
I think it's amazing, just because of, like we said, we're keeping that balance of this TNA and NXT partnership. I think a lot of people have said of just like, okay, when is TNA going to kind of get their like more weight to this and stuff? And I think this just shows that by having Joe Hendry not only beat one of your rising stars of Wesley going into the NXT Championship, but also Pete Dunne, a legend in NXT, and then being able to take on Ethan Page right now, who has just been killing it as the top heel right now. I just think it's amazing, and just makes me look more forward to watching No Mercy.
Absolutely. Honey, your thoughts on Joe Hendry as the #1 contender for the NXT Championship?
I mean, I have no other words except for these two. I'm a believer, a super believer in Joe Hendry. This is pretty nuts how much this man has skyrocketed. Like, just you might as well, like, why even put us through the torture and the torment of a triple threat match? Just give him the strap. Just give it to him already, because that's the intention here, and that's what we all want, because we are all believers and we believe in Joe Hendry. You see the tag in the bottom. I'm a believer. For sure.
So Courtney, let me ask you the question to be asked, and that is, come No Mercy, does Joe Hendry win the NXT Championship?
Oh man, that's actually a good question. I'm actually going to go back a bit on the partnership with WWE and TNA. If you would have told me this back in 2003, when TNA was first starting, I kind of would have been laughing in your face and be like, that's not going to happen. But here we are. So it's really exciting because I have seen clips of him on Instagram. I have seen him do interviews, and he does seem like a really great guy who loves wrestling. So I'm very intrigued to see him and Ethan Page go at it. And I can imagine their promos are going to be pretty much spitfire leading up to No Mercy, because I wouldn't be shocked if Ethan Page took shots at him. I wouldn't be shocked if Joe took shots at him. So I'm really excited to see how this match is going to go. And I think it may be a really good match at No Mercy. And I'm actually really excited. And I actually am going to plan to watch an NXT pay-per-view, which I have not done in a while, since 2012.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 2012 was Brooklyn. NXT in Brooklyn.
Woo. Bringing it back to black and gold.
Okay. Okay, so let me ask. I want to be completely I want the backstory on this. Why have you not watched an NXT pay-per-view since 2012, which predates Black and Gold?
Predates Black and Gold.
Yeah.
Well, of course, it's hard to keep up with wrestling every now and then, especially with NXT, because there was so much happening at that time. And I was watching it, but it was always so hard to find out pay-per-view, because you had Monday on Raw, Tuesday at NXT, then of course Wednesday AEW, Friday was SmackDown. So it was kind of a lot to do, but I was able to follow NXT on social. I was able to follow like some of the stars that are on the main roster, like of course Carmelo Hayes. And then you had that match with Trick Williams back at WrestleMania in Philly, because I heard they had a really good match. So I'm starting to creep back into NXT because finally they're back on TV, and also hearing a lot of good reviews on the production, on how they run their program. So that makes me happy. So I'm starting to watch it regularly. It's just very hard to.
You didn't tell me you missed the Undisputed Era?
So wait, you said 2000, so 2012.
I'm trying to think, 2012 or 2016, because that was like Brooklyn Takeover.
Yeah, because 2012 they hadn't. In 2012, they were barely on Hulu in 2012, and they were still kind of this is kind of in 2012, they were going, because remember when NXT first showed up, it was like this competition show, which, you know, was definitely more along the lines of what WWE was doing back then. Of course, once the WWE Network showed up in 2014, it ended up being its own standalone product there, and that is kind of what ushered us into the black and gold era. And then they hit TV in 2019 on USA. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm following your timeline in terms of 2012. And so I guess my next question is, what has created enough interest for you to start watching NXT again?
I think because some of the stars that are on the main roster now that were on NXT, Lyra Valkyria, of course, Roxanne. I've been following her since she first came on NXT, and of course, Carmelo Hayes, as I mentioned, Trick Williams, knock on the door, maybe on the main roster, and then of course, following Ethan Page from AEW up until now, and just seeing some of the stars that came on the main roster and seeing how they developed, because some of them were former champions, even some that are on now. Ilya Dragunov, he was on NXT, Braun Breaker, and seeing them, and then they were talking about they had a rivalry back in NXT that lasted for a while. So seeing some of that backstory, it was pretty fascinating to me, and that really got me intrigued, because even though I like the sport, I always like the storytelling aspect.
Well, I'll say this. A, welcome back to NXT. B, do yourself a favor if you get any degree of free time. Go on to Peacock. Just go through some of the old NXT takeovers. Because what you'll see is several of the names that are currently in AEW were cooking in NXT. And before we had an AEW, NXT was by far the space to get kind of the style of wrestling that you're getting in AEW, coupled with fantastic storytelling. So do yourself a favor. You'll go back. You'll enjoy it. Councilman,
can I ask you, which would you recommend for her to watch as far as the PLEs and NXT? Like if she went back to Peacock tonight, which one would you say you need to watch?
Here's what's anything in that takeover era is crazy. But if you want a good reminder, you said Brooklyn, was it Brooklyn 1 or Brooklyn 2 that was the last one you watched?
It had to be Brooklyn 1, because I believe that was the match Sasha and Bailey had.
I think they were Brooklyn 2.
Brooklyn 2?
Brooklyn
Okay.
2.
Brooklyn 2.
So go do that. Start there. Start back on that one. And then just keep watching the takeovers. I mean, if you watch the regular show, it'll just probably take you too long. But the regular shows were crazy. But start at Takeover Brooklyn 2 and just let it keep playing.
Just ride the wave. Just follow the rabbit hole.
Man.
So there's some twists and turns in those years, man. Woo.
Yeah, it's
so good.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it's that NXT North American inaugural championship ladder match.
The ladder match.
So you have that now. Somebody help my memory. I'm usually good with this stuff, but I don't think that was the same. That wasn't the same night. That wasn't Dallas, right? That wasn't Takeover Dallas, was it? Because I'm thinking about Takeover Dallas being the debut of Shinsuke Nakamura. That debut and that match against Sami Zayn, crazy. Matter of fact,
that was New Orleans.
New Orleans. Thank you. New Orleans was the ladder match, but that's why you got to start at Brooklyn, because there were so many moments on these takeovers. I'll say, I think it's okay to say this name. The full rise of the Velveteen Dream. That was a whole thing. all things DIY. If you love FTR, you got to go back and watch what they were doing in NXT. I mean,
Finn Balor as the Dean.
Finn. Yeah,
Samoa Joe.
I just was the other day, like 2 days ago, I was watching TakeOver, and this will take you guys back. There was it started off with a number 1 contenders match, Tyler Breeze and Finn Balor. And Finn came out as the demon, and people lost their stuff. You hear me? That's how it kicked off. You just you see the rise of Corey Graves as a commentator. Like oh man,
Bobby Roode, the glorious era.
Glorious era.
Oh,
the
Lord.
the undisputed era.
Oh,
God. And all that. Oh my God, so many good years.
Yeah.
Even Seth Rollins when he was Tyler Black, you know what I'm saying? Or Drew McIntyre when he resurfaced again and came back to WWE. And now we have, look at the Drew we have now. Alistair Black. Don't get me started.
Alistair Black. When Ricochet showed up, right?
Yes.
Like, yeah. You got a homework assignment, Courtney.
The pop when Shinsuke showed up on the screen when he was said to be Sammy's next challenger was absolutely bananas.
And then there's all things Asuka.
Yes.
So
and Shayna Baszler.
Let me shout out all of the great people in the chat because the chat is buzzing. Shout out to cousin Ron. Shout out to Jeffrey. Dylan, good to see you. Eric, good to see you as well. Of course, the mayor is in the chat. It's great to see you there as well. That's right. Keith Lee.
Oh, yeah.
Hello.
Oh,
good God.
The title for title. Yeah. Just don't throw that out.
And that was during the pandemic.
Yes.
That's how they were cooking. Good Lord. Boza, good to see you. The Way, that was special. Finn Balor's second run was very, very special. Corey Graves was a former tag team champion in NXT. The Asuka era. Oh man, Alistair and
Tommaso Ciampa.
Oh yes.
Him and Johnny's feud. Oh, that last standing.
Takeover Chicago when Ciampa turned on Gargano and none of us saw it coming.
None of us. All of us. You can watch it now.
Dakota Kai and Tegan Knox during War Games.
Yep. The first women's War Games.
Forever.
Yep, women's War Games. Rhea Ripley versus Raquel.
The rise of Bianca.
The list goes on.
Bianca
Belair.
Oh my Lord.
Andrade.
You're gonna have a ball watching this stuff.
Dijak versus Keith Lee. Yeah. Well said.
We're going on.
Said.
I mean, we could do this forever. So many good. Like NXT was a good time, girl. You gotta definitely watch that.
I know.
I am sure Courtney had no clue what she was about to unleash when she said that. So, but trust me, you want to listen for someone who loves wrestling, a black and gold era. It was such a breath of fresh air. It was almost like you couldn't believe it was under the WWE umbrella. It was so good. It was so different. I mean, Kevin Owens, when he showed up. Lord. Okay.
Yeah.
And competing with WWE pay-per-views. Like, you were ready to watch that before you were ready to watch Money in the Bank or anything. You're like, yo, I'm watching NXT before this go on, though.
I remember the first night he came on Raw. He confronted John Cena and his ladder match with Finn Balor at TakeOver.
Yeah.
Drew McIntyre's return to WWE through NXT.
And I gotta go here because I saw some other people mention it. Mauro Ranallo, listen to me. He is one of my muses when it comes to commentary. And so, I miss him, man. Yeah. Oh gosh. NXT No Mercy will be a great place for you to make your return to the NXT PLE world. they are going to cook, and we clearly start to have an understanding of what No Mercy is going to look like. It's going to be in Denver on Sunday, which is going to be a very full weekend because the day before is Bash in Berlin. Then you've got No Mercy, and that whole week kicks off this Sunday, of course, with All in London. But we've got Joe Hendry battling for the NXT Championship against Ethan Page, two guys with very strong ties to TNA. We also found out the brand new #1 contender for the Women's Championship, Roxanne Perez, will be taking on Jada Parker. I already have a space that I'm putting this particular match. I may save that commentary for next week when we get closer to the No Mercy PLE. We also know that we have a new challenger for the North American Championship, the Men's North American Championship. Obafemi goes up against Tony D'Angelo. And then there will be a rematch for the tag titles as Chase U will once again battle Axiom and Nathan Fraser. Should be a great PLE, a great one for you to return on, Courtney. And obviously, once it's done, we'll be very interested in seeing how you feel about this PLE. All right. We're gonna move from NXT into this conversation.
Wait a minute though. We not gonna talk about the highlight of the night on NXT.
Now, see, I was trying to save that for whatever NXT post show there might be. I didn't want to. I didn't want to do that.
Indulge me for a second, sir.
Oh, wow. Wow. That was not on my program. All right.
A former UFC fighter knocked out by a pillow. Let me tell you, I watched this so many times. I probably gave the most views on this social media clip. A pillow took her out. Are you kidding me? So much about fighting in the underground, knocking people out, and you got knocked out by something you sleep on for a 1, 2, 3 count. But you know what? I don't blame Lola Vice. I blame her representative, the mayor. This is karma, because we know Zelina Vega would have never went through this. This is what you get for disrespecting HBK. This is what you get for disrespecting Oscar. This is what happened. This is karma right here. And saying she's the best on the poster and still ain't got no match yet for No Mercy. Hopefully she gets something Tuesday. She still ain't got no match yet.
And right on cue, here is Cindy-O. Lola Vice turned up on main event, and that was probably the highlight of Ced's career. Oh my gosh, this is so good. I can't program this stuff this great. This is fantastic.
The councilman office has hijacked the program.
Wow.
Oh, so great.
Oh man. And the run continues.
And it continues. So so with that, we'll go to, you're probably wondering, why did Omos show up on our screen? We have not seen Omos on television in a very, very long time. Well, the reason Omos is on our screen is because the great Muta, who is a very influential name, obviously, in Japanese wrestling. He's working currently with Tavion Height. The great Muta has expressed great interest in having Omos show up in Pro Wrestling Noah, which I think is a major move. He's a huge fan of Omos. He has Omos. We've not seen Omos on WWE television since the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, which was all the way back in April. Do you think, and we'll start with you on this one, Courtney, do you think that Omos taking a trip to Japan would be a good move for his career?
I do think it's a possibility. It would be a great move because I have seen a lot of people go to Japan and try to elevate or try to find a second chance in their wrestling career, whether they had a bust in a previous one. And sometimes you kind of need that shift a bit. And it's always good to go outside of the country and just figure out different wrestling promotions. Like, for example, we haven't seen Anna Jay in weeks because she's wrestling in Stardom right now, and she is getting a little bit better because I have seen clips of her matches. So it's always good to have that. And also, not just wrestling, but maybe it's a possibility he can work on promos or maybe getting a possible manager to help him elevate his career. But I don't see the harm of him going to Japan. And he gets to experience culture in Japan. So that's also a plus too.
Honey, your thoughts on the possibilities of Omos heading over to Pro Wrestling Noah?
I think if there is an opportunity for Omos to join Pro Wrestling Noah, I don't see a reason why he shouldn't take it. He we know that he's a larger than life kind of character and athlete just by his appearance alone. It would actually be pretty cool to see him go to Japan, because then it also gives shades of like how Andre the Giant was in Japan when he made that transition over there, and they looked at him like, of course, as he was, which we know he was the eighth wonder of the world. And he always had that presence, and Omos has presence of that nature, larger than life, athletic, very strong, and I think that would be a pretty cool move for him. Being that we haven't seen him in a while too. The last time even I would even say he appeared even at a live show was probably the Christmas show last year, in December even, because I remember seeing him there, and I was just like, we haven't really seen him since then. It's almost going on a year, but why not do it?
Councilman, what do you think Omos can gain from the great Muta?
A lot, actually. I don't think we've seen Omos even tap into like a third of his potential. Like to Honey's point, he is this giant wonder of the world, but we have not seen him utilized in the way that I feel like he should be. I think it was very wrong of them to feed him to Brock Lesnar like how they did, and I think that really dropped a lot of his stock coming into. But I think with the great Muta being able to get just to pick his brain and to be over there in Japan, I think we really get to show how a giant can still work in today's wrestling industry. And I don't think we've really gotten a full chance to see that. Like even like with Braun Strowman, like we've seen what Braun can do. Like when I seen Braun run up on top that turnbuckle for a suplex, I'm like, yo, this man can go. Omos can go. But it's like, why are they not utilizing them in the way that they should be? So hopefully having someone like the great Muta to just pick those decades of knowledge, I think would help tremendously for him, and I think would make him an even bigger grab for WWE. I don't know if he's still with them or not, or just make them see him a little bit more of, hey, we need to get this guy back on television.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting thing, and it definitely could be the thing that reinvigorates his career. The challenge, I think, in this current iteration of WWE is there is the focus on a smaller wrestler, and there's a focus on a more technically driven wrestler, along with a wrestler with a lot of personality. So if your only claim to fame in this version of the WWE is your size, that alone might not be enough. Where you could argue in Vince McMahon's WWE, if you literally passed the airport test, that may have been enough. So I think for Omos to go over to Japan where he would be revered, because again, there's nobody like him over there. And if you think about some of the biggest names, the Giant Baba, who was a major name over there because he was a monster. Andre the Giant, because he was a monster. You could even argue Stan Hansen, who was violent, but a monster. Bruiser Brody, violent and a monster and very, very big. So I think this is a move that can make sense for Omos, and Omos has been quietly doing house shows. I saw him on a house show or a live event rather back in March, but we really haven't again seen or heard much from him, of course, since the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal back in April. So this will be interesting, and I think it could be a very good move for him, and it could raise his stock if he's able to find great success there over at Pro Wrestling Noah. And while we're in Japan, let's talk about perhaps one of the most revered tournaments in all of pro wrestling, that being the G1 Climax. It happens every summer in New Japan. And it's interesting, there may not have been as much conversation about it this year, just because I think over the last few years, there's been so much interest in what's been going on in New Japan because of some of the recognizable stars. And this year, there had not been as much talk about it, even though from AEW, Konosuke Takeshita was a part of the G1 Climax Tour and did rather well this year. But the finals were Sunday, and congratulations to Zack Sabre Jr., who wins the G1 Climax. And he's actually very excited. We've talked on this show before about about how New Japan at this particular stage is really in a rebuilding stage, looking to establish who their new stars are, looking to establish who will be the people to literally lead New Japan around the world. And Zack Sabre Jr. certainly looks to be one of those people. So he did something very unusual. If you follow New Japan, the winner of the G1 Climax usually punches their ticket to the main event of Wrestle Kingdom in January. It has been that way for many, many years until this weekend, where Zack Sabre Jr. decided he's going to shoot his shot a lot earlier. Not January the 4th, but at the King of Pro Wrestling event, which will happen on October the 14th, where he will challenge whoever the world champion is then, which will either be the current champion, Tetsuya Naito, or the Great Okan. Here's the question for you guys. The question, and I'll start with you, Councilman, is this. Is Zack Sabre Jr. the right guy for New Japan Pro Wrestling to hitch their wagon behind to lead them into the future?
Ooh, that's a great question. I want to say yes, but I am still a little bit hesitant.
Okay.
So I won't say I believe in him like I believe in Joe Hendry just yet, but I do think Zach is a good face for them to get behind to see if this can work. He is very dedicated to the craft. He's an excellent in-ring performer. I just also want to see what is New Japan's idea of how they move into the future. Like, how is this switch going to happen, and does Zack Sabre fit into that with the ideas that they have? So I'm gonna say it's possible, but I'm still a little on the fence about it. But I would not mind seeing Zack Sabre holding up that championship. He more than well deserves it. He has busted his behind for years now and has never disappointed me in a match.
Courtney, I know you are a follower of AEW, so you've likely seen Zack Sabre Jr. in some of his matches against Bryan Danielson and several others, as he's had several matches in AEW. Given, kind of the controversy that's happened over the last year or so with the Forbidden Door pay-per-view and the thoughts that there really aren't the kind of superstars that there were over in New Japan, do you think Zack Sabre Jr. would be the right guy to kind of lead this resurgence for New Japan versus the world?
So the match I actually saw him at Forbidden Door against Orange Cassidy this year really gave me respect for him because he's a good in-ring technician. I'm not going to say yes or no because I'm still learning more about him, but I do respect the craft that he's doing in the ring. And I'm also very curious on what specific direction New Japan is going to go because, as you mentioned earlier, there are going to be a lot of shifting and figuring out what direction they're going to go. So I would not be shocked if he is the face for New Japan Wrestling. He has done a lot of the work, and I'm excited to see what's going to lie ahead next. And he does have all the confidence in the world and all the moves to back it up. So I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen next with Zack Sabre Jr.
Honey, your thoughts? Could Zack Sabre Jr. become the guy for New Japan?
I think it's possible. I mean, anything's possible when you're in a position as such. I think it's really interesting that he's kind of like, it's kind of like being in the same route as, it reminds me of when Kenny Omega was doing his thing over there. He's also the only other G1 Climax winner that was foreign born. I think it's definitely a possibility, being that he has made a name for himself out there, and why not? I mean, the possibilities are endless, and you never say never.
So I'll throw this one to you, Courtney, just as more homework for you to go watch, because you'll really enjoy this. If you want to see something amazing with Zack Sabre Jr., go back on the WWE Network and check out a thing called the Cruiserweight Classic. In the Cruiserweight Classic, Zack Sabre Jr. was heavily involved in that. And for a lot of American fans, that was where they had their first taste of Zack Sabre Jr. And he was incredible. And everybody was looking in that. It's even wild to say this in 2024. Everybody was looking forward to a potential final between Zack Sabre Jr. and Kota Ibushi in the Cruiserweight Classic, which is nuts to be able to say. But Zack Sabre Jr., I think, obviously one of the most respected wrestlers in the world. He fits kind of what caused the expansion of New Japan internationally in the first place, which is you have to have English-speaking stars that are recognizable throughout the world. Will Ospreay kind of fit that over the last couple of years after Kenny Omega and the Elite were gone. And so if you think about just how this whole situation has grown for New Japan, a lot of it was because there was someone who the United States and the American and English-speaking fans could connect with. That initially being Kenny Omega, Cody Rhodes, the Bucks, Will Ospreay, Ricochet, Zack Sabre Jr. That's kind of how all of this is looking. So I think he fits that bill. If you think there's also that expansion for New Japan into the United States with what they're doing with New Japan Strong, they need someone who represents the company that can really travel back and forth. It's actually one of the reasons why it made sense earlier this year that Jon Moxley was the world champion. They've kind of, I don't want to say they put themselves in a challenging space, but it is rather challenging if you have someone who cannot speak English fluently as your world champion and you're still trying to expand into America. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how this goes. But I'm very happy for Zack Sabre Jr. And to me, the fact that he is not waiting until Wrestle Kingdom says that there are potentially very big plans for Zack Sabre Jr. to go into 2025 as the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion. Just think about what the wrestling world's going to look like in 2025 as Monday Night Raw moves over to Netflix. And what many may not realize is a lot of the WWE network internationally is already being spaced in Netflix. So now everybody will be connected to WWE and Netflix. New Japan's going to need to have a strong answer. Zack Sabre Jr. could very well be that guy. Moving on, speaking of New Japan, the current New Japan Strong Women's Champion is Mercedes Mone. She also holds on to the TBS Championship, and she has been doing her media rounds as we are going into All In. Of course, All In is this Sunday. You guys are hilarious. If you are only listening, you can't see what's happening with two of the three of our hosts, but suddenly there's a lot of light shining in the rooms where they are, and it's so bright that they need to put on shades. So Mercedes Mone, in a newsletter that she released this week, decided to share with the world what her original plan was in terms of thoughts of going back to WWE. She actually said that she was planning on returning to WWE at WrestleMania 39. So kind of the way this story goes is before she went to All In, she was at a Rams game at the new SoFi Stadium. Her and her associate named Kevin, they were on the field and they were saying, this is where WrestleMania is going to be. It just makes sense that I am here. And before that could happen, she got invited to go see All In from Tony Khan. According to her, at that point, there were no discussions with signing with AEW. Of course, she showed up at All In several months later, and she said it was about halfway through that show where, in her words, quote, her mind changed, and that's where she said she knew AEW was the place to be. She said the fact that they got over 80,000 rabid and passionate fans to attend an event that was not WrestleMania blew me away. It made me excited for wrestling in a way I had not felt in a long time. By the end of the show, we were planning the very entrance that you will see this year. So let's get your thoughts. And Courtney, we'll start with you. Do you think Mercedes should have followed her mind and returned to WWE at WrestleMania 39? Or did she make the right move by pursuing AEW?
Oh man, that's a tough question. There was talk of her wanting to come to WWE after the mishap that happened beforehand. And also I understand for her, she wanted to take a break from everything and just figure out what she wanted to do. And the minute that she saw All In, she was pretty much enrolled on getting into AEW and really lit a fire in her when it came to wrestling. So I probably would have said she did. And also considering she's heading in her second or third match with AEW this weekend, especially against one of the first ladies that was signed to AEW. So that is also going to be intriguing as well. I know her and Britt are really gonna block a lot of heads, and that's really going to be intriguing. But I do think she did make the right call because she did listen to herself, and the only decision that she made was hers. I don't think Tony forced her to make that decision, and that was fully just Mercedes making her final decision and her final call that, hey, AEW is the place that I want to wrestle, and I get to do that.
Okay. Councilman, what do you think? Do you think that Mercedes should have made the move at WrestleMania 39, or did she do the right thing by going to AEW?
I think she did the right thing. This just smells like CM Punk ass's route. Like, you need to go over there, figure some stuff out, figure out that, hey, you're not bigger than the business, and then come back home and be more humble like he is now. So I think you need to see this of doing what I want to do and then seeing how that don't work. And then last place you can come to is to come back home and maybe get a little bit more sense of, hey, I'm not bigger than this whole thing, and that I need to appreciate that. And not saying that she does do that, but I mean, not saying that she may believe, but I'm just saying what the perception is being given off. It's like a person taking a ball and going home. We've seen you do it with WWE. We've slightly seen you do it with New Japan. And now it's just not if, but when will it happen with AEW? And I don't even put that towards her too much. But what happens when Tony finds a new shiny toy and you're no longer in his limelight? Do you fold or do you stay strong with the company you say is the place to be? Only time is going to tell. But I think she did make a better choice of coming here to be able to find that out. So hopefully she does something a little bit better down the future.
So, honey, I want to ask you a question because, well, if y'all don't know me, I am a math major by choice. Numbers mean a lot to me. You know the way my brain works. So I'm just going to put a timeline together for you just based off of what she said. So Mercedes said she attended a football game in SoFi Stadium before WrestleMania 39. So that would have had to have been somewhere in that fall 2022 time frame. WrestleMania, of course, was March/April of 2023. All in London was August of 2023, which is 4 months after WrestleMania. And then, of course, let me back up my timeline and say she attended the game sometime likely fall 2022. She debuted with New Japan January 2023. WrestleMania was March of 2023. February of 2023, she's now the New Japan or the IWGP Women's Champion. By May, of course, she gets injured and she's out. Then by August is All In. And of course, we see her there on screen in the audience. And of course, she does not debut with AEW until March of 2024. So for you, is the timeline making sense in terms of the decision that she made? And do you think she feels good about the decision that she's made?
What's that the kids say today? The math ain't mathing. Somewhat something about this timeline is a little fishy for me as well. It's hard not to believe that she was thinking about AEW the whole time, being that she due to the way that she abruptly left WWE. I think she was also looking for another place to be able to like All In was basically her seeing if they could sell out the place, and if they could, she's going to join that roster and help them sell out even more. But did she make the right decision? She absolutely did, obviously, because it made her the richest woman in pro wrestling. But yeah, the math is definitely not mathing with this. It's kind of, I feel like it kind of would have conflicted as well. I mean, being that I'm trying to think of back to when how the partnership it was going on with AEW and New Japan as well. Like, wasn't it a little bit like shaky around that time as well? So like, I don't know if that would have even been a possibility for her to be able to come to WWE, especially that we were back in the Vince era as well. But we're in Triple H era now, and she is one of those kids, one of Triple H's babies, his four horsewomen, and she, I think there's something about her that really misses WWE, being now that there are certain things that have shifted in this new era, and being that Triple H has full creative control, as well as Shawn Michaels down in NXT, and those are both men that she has worked with and looked up to as mentors. So I think there's a part of her that still misses WWE and wants to go back, but there's right now she is tied to a contract, and she is working it, and she's building her new legacy here in AEW, and we'll see how far that takes her.
We will definitely see. Mercedes has even more to say. You mentioned the four horsewomen. And so she also in this newsletter has made a very interesting statement, and I want you guys to check it out. As she says that Britt, as in Britt Baker, and her and the rest of the ladies at AEW are just getting started. This is interesting. She said that Charlotte, Bayley, Becky, and her led phase 1 of the women's revolution, disrupted the business in the most necessary way. But she says, with me coming to AEW, there will be another disruption to the business. Phase 2 is just getting started. On that note, there are 3 women's matches at All In this Sunday. When Mania was one night, how many women's matches were there? Not 3. Moreover, when the guys' matches went too long in WWE, it was the women's matches that got cut for time. Okay, so I want to get your thoughts on what Mercedes has said in this particular statement, because it's a loaded statement. On one hand, she's saying that there is another women's revolution coming, and it will be led by the women of AEW. But then she's also saying at the same time, look at how women's wrestling has progressed. There are 3 women's matches at All In this Sunday. And when Mania was only one night, There were not 3 women's matches on that card. Courtney, what are your takeaways from this statement? These are Mercedes' words. What do you make of this?
Ooh, that's a lot to unpack there. There is a lot. First off, if you're gonna do women's revolution and nothing against the 4 horsewomen at that time, you got to give credit to the women that paved the way for you. Number one, and I'm talking about the era with Trish, Jackie, Ivory, Lita, Victoria, because that was in my head. Because when I think of like when people say women's revolution and they're thinking, oh, we paved the way, you got to give credit to those women. Those women paved the way. And also, I think I remember Sasha actually adored Trish when she first came in to WWE, because I think she talked about Trish for a bit. But anyways, I kind of had to think about that. And also in regards to the women's resolution AEW, it was already starting to blow up because yeah, you had Britt, you had Hikaru Shida coming in because they had a gruesome match. Thunder Rosa coming in, Willow Nightingale, Chris Statlander, Sky Blue, Julia Hart. Like these were some women that were starting to come in and starting to be on the rise. So I'm I'm a little bit mixed on this one because their women's was starting to heat up a bit in AEW, and I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see how some of the other women are gonna line up to her because, of course, she had her match with Willow. I would love to see her go one-on-one with Hikaru Shida because that would be an interesting rivalry to watch. So
I think
there's a lot.
Mercedes just fought Sheeta actually, like
She
last week or something
did.
like that.
She
Yeah.
did. But also, I feel like there's a lot of bad blood there because I know Mercedes won the match, but I feel like Hikaru Shida wants like revenge against her for some reason. I don't know. I like to be intrigued on that, especially on some women's matches. But I'm gonna be intrigued, and I feel like a lot's gonna happen after All In, and I'm curious on who's gonna be after she's done with Britt. I'm curious who's gonna be Mercedes' next rival after Dr. Britt Baker.
Honey, what are your thoughts on these comments here from Mercedes?
Uh, I feel like I feel like we're beyond the phases. You know, I mean, things have changed. As I'm sorry, I can't. I'm laughing at the council. I just no. There's women have been making history in AEW before Mercedes came into the picture. As some of the names Courtney mentioned, including one Jade Cargill, who's now with WWE. Britt Baker being the first woman ever to be signed with AEW. I mean, I would have to feel some kind of way, or Julia Hart, if I'm one of these women, and Willow Nightingale, even if you want to, rip that Band-Aid off again with those two, because that would be another one too. But it's like, there's a lot of other women here on this roster that haven't even begun to scratch the surface and get the proper shine that they've earned. It's just I feel like this girl is just, in some ways, shape, or form, in certain scenarios in her head, I feel like she can come off as a little bit full of herself, a little feeling herself. I understand that you did usher in a different women's evolution at a certain time, especially when we needed it, when women's wrestling started becoming the thing and the diva thing started, washing away. That is very important as well. But in AEW, there's other women to work with, as far as, oh my God, and I forget to mention Toni Storm. Hello. You have so many other storylines and so many other women going on in AEW that even people, there's even women that haven't even shown on TV as much as they used to, so there's more to work with there. And if you're going to get started on the phases, girl, just start it. Like, I thought it started when you arrived. I'm just saying.
Councilman, you look like you have an opinion on this, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I mean, what are your takeaways from this commentary here from Mercedes?
Every time Punk just opens her mouth, she just puts her foot in it. Like, let's just break this down. Let's just break this down. So, you telling me you think you started the women's revolution? Let's keep it very clear. You did not. Paige, AJ Lee, Natalya, these are the pillars that started to go, you know what? In WWE itself, we should start taking women's wrestling seriously. The horsewomen benefited off of that, was given the torch and carried it well. Yes, you are not what disrupted it. It was those women, not to mention what Courtney said, the women prior to you, because you weren't the first one to have a main event match on Raw. That was Lita and Trish. You are not one of the, you did have first bangers coming in with Hell in a Cell, Last Woman Standing, yes, but you are not the one that started the catalyst of this. There were people way before you. So for you to disrespect them goes back to what I say, where you think you are bigger than the business.
I just want to throw out for the record regards to the main event with Trish and Lita. And I know everybody thinks that was the first match to main event. You got to go back to Lita versus Stephanie when they fought in the main event for the women's title, and The Rock was the referee.
Oh, yeah.
I think
Oh, my goodness.
First time women. I just want to be clear on that, because people tend to forget about that match. And that was when Lita won her first women's title.
Yeah. And so to write this statement, like your bottom part about the WWE stuff and WrestleMania, very true. Very understandable. You are right. But this top part of, you see AEW has 3 women's matches, like you were responsible for that. And again, it's just how it comes off. AEW was already having multiple women's matches during their pay-per-views. Before you got there, before you were even thought about, before you were just sitting in the back complaining and then walked out on the company. So for you to take these 2 things and mix them together like, oh, it's because of me that I've done this, and you're the 4th best horsewoman, it's just like, yo, humble yourself. Or like how your mama used to tell you in church. Like, it's like, oh man, bro. I just look forward to the day somebody gives her a reality check. I don't know what is gonna come in, because it's just like you want to believe in her so bad, because it's like, yo, you have given us classic moments. I'm never gonna take that away from her. Same thing like they've said, like most of the horsewomen's best matches involve her. But it's like when you say stuff like this, it's just it really, and I hate to say it like this, it really goes back to the whole thing. Shut up and dribble. It's really getting to the point. Just shut up and wrestle, because you're gonna do something that's gonna really disrespect somebody, that's gonna turn everything against you, and you are teetering on that line. You're gonna end up like Ronda Rousey, and that's the one thing I do not want for you.
Oh my Lord.
I
don't know about telling her to shut up. I'll just say keep pressing.
So I'll say a couple of things. I'm never gonna say shut up and dribble. What I will say though is I do think that she should probably rethink doing as much press. So there's that. In terms of this particular statement, one of the things that's not even being mentioned amid this whole women's revolution, obviously we go back to, you can really make the argument, you could start it with Alundra Blaze in 93, and all that she did in her iconic match in 95 with Bull Nakano. on Monday Night
Never
Raw
seen it.
was
Monday Night Raw,
really
yep.
kind of the blueprint. But then to see standouts like Jazz and Jacqueline during the Attitude Era, who were willing to actually have matches and not solely participate in, you know, bra and panties kinds of situations. You know, it's there's a lot of names to credit this revolution that happened. The thing I'm concerned about is why she's still stuck in calling this a revolution. Because at this point, you know, you can go back to WrestleMania 35, of course, where we had our first all women's main event at a WrestleMania. Since then, there's been great women's matches on WrestleMania, multiple women's matches at a WrestleMania. But not just that, but we can't ignore what TNA has consistently done since 2008. You know, while people were still talking about divas, they were the ones having matches in cages. They were, you know, the Gail Kims of the world, the Awesome Kongs of the world, you know, and that was consistent since then. They've always had an extremely strong women's division. And where we are now in the space of women's wrestling, there's no longer a thing that you can call a revolution. Women have been dominating the conversation. And to even throw this line about WWE when Mania was one night, how many women's matches were there? I think she forgot about the same All In she attended last year. That All In that had 12 or 13 matches and only one of them was a women's match. And that was because it featured Saraya so that she could win her championship in her home country of England. So let's not get selective memory here. And to me, I honestly think whatever it is that her and Britt and the ladies of AEW are considering, it's going to be much tougher than what her and the Four Horsewomen did, because the bar was lower, much lower than. You know, at this point, we've now had multiple main events in a WrestleMania. We've had cage matches. We've had, and quite frankly, AEW has done some very physical things in terms of brutal, bloody matches with women. So I think the goal here is wrong. The goal should not be phase 2 of a women's revolution. How about we just focus on presenting AEW's women's division in the absolute best light possible? That, to me, is what makes the most sense. Because right now, NXT, WWE, TNA, all of their women's divisions are surpassing all things AEW. NXT on any given week is going to have 3 or 4 women's matches on a weekly basis, at least. Sometimes there are more women's matches on the weekly show than men's matches. So this talk of a revolution is antiquated and, dare I say, antediluvian. Like, why are we having this conversation about a women's revolution when at this particular point, the revolution has been televised? There have been sequels. There have been new series. We're past that. We're past that. If anything, you should be looking for parity inside the company that you're currently working in. The idea that we keep talking about WrestleMania, we keep talking about WWE, says to me that your eyes are not focused on where you are. If anything, if I'm being paid the most money of any women's wrestler in the world, my focus is going to be on the company that's writing my check. And so for me, I'm just sitting here saying all of these comparisons to WrestleMania and WWE are pointless. You need to be focused on how do we make AEW the best presentation, not just for an all-in, but on a weekly basis, because the complaints are about what happens weekly in the women's division. And please, you can't compare.
Uh-oh.
I am not sure what just happened. I am not sure what just happened here, guys. Everybody just got knocked out. I don't know if it was some internet disruption or something, but I think we'll let the professor cool off and let's try to see where the disruption is and figure that out. But until then, here is a message from our sponsors, and go check out our merch, y'all.
This episode of Women's Wrestling Talk has been brought to you by All Caribbean Wrestling. Catch the wave. Go to allcaribbeanwrestling.com to check out all the latest pay-per-views or go on the YouTube page at All Caribbean Wrestling. Also, go and check out their socials on Instagram at All Caribbean Wrestling and on X at All Caribbean WR1.
Hey, yo, you. Yeah, you that's watching this. You sitting on the couch staring at the screen not knowing what you want to do like this is an online college. Are you tired of wearing shirts that make you look like an extra stuck in catering? Do you want to step your wrestling swag game up to the next level? Then Women's Wrestling Talk has got you covered. Like literally. Are you for life in pink or black and white? Or maybe you're the EST and people need to respect you accordingly. Want to put some pride in your stride and show off the muscle in your hustle? Then make sure you check out the WWT store. Not now, but right now. Alright? What you waiting for? Head to www talkpodstore.com and don't make me fight you. Shit.
Well, I don't know what happened, folks. I guess somebody got upset that we're having this conversation, but I think we're all back. I think.
I'm glad we're all back.
You were definitely going in there.
I wanted you to finish your point so bad, but I was like, wait a minute, everybody thought that it was just me, so I went to our sponsors for a moment, and we got it figured out. But here we are. Okay.
Well, thank you for doing that. I appreciate that. It is the beauty of being live. I don't know what happened, but what I'll simply say is I do think that Mercedes' focus is completely wrong. Focus on building the house that you're living in now. Because all of the other houses have focused on their own product. And that's why TNA is much further along. NXT is further with people who have been in the game for a far less amount of time than what you see in AEW or in TNA. So there's a lot to be said for that. And again, I think the concept of doing this whole revolution situation, it's antiquated. Like, why are we even having a conversation about it? At this point, focus on being the best champion for New Japan and for AEW, since you have both of their women's divisions on your back, and both of them have had their own sets of challenges. So,
and everything you know from the company, bring that over to AEW. Like, you can't tell me it wouldn't kill to have an all-women's pay-per-view at AEW with all of the talent that's there.
Yep.
All the knowledge you got from this former company, bring that.
That would be epic. That would be epic.
It would make a ton of sense if it was something that they were interested in doing. So we'll see what happens with that. But yeah, Mercedes Mone, again, she's going to be defending her championship, the TBS championship, that is, this Sunday night at All In. And I'm just intrigued to see how all of this press is going to work for her over time. We'll certainly see. Okay, so moving from Mercedes, let's talk about someone else who's in the interview circuit, and that is this guy, John Cena, who may have arguably made an appearance on one of the biggest podcasts in the world, and that is Club Shay Shay with Shannon Sharp. That episode is available right now. They had quite a bit that they talked about, but one of the things that's perhaps extremely interesting is John Cena was asked, who is the greatest of all time? And he put his one up to acknowledge the tribal chief. Yes, indeed. GOAT says the GOAT is Roman Reigns. And his measurement for that is perhaps one of the simplest yet most profound measurements of all. He says back in 2012, when Roman started, the stock for WWE was traded at $11 a share. Now it is at $117 a share. Now he acknowledged that it's a team effort. and that obviously there have been a lot of other factors involved. But can we agree with John Cena's assertion? Is Roman Reigns really the greatest of all time? What do you think about that, Courtney?
I can't take anything away from Roman, but that's kind of, I don't want to say greatest of all time because I'm thinking in my head, there's so many. And also considering he did have a reign, he had the longest reign. And I can't take away from everything he's done with the pandemic, when he was champion, and some of the work. I would love to say he's the greatest of all time, but it's very hard because there's so many other superstars from a different generation that I could kind of put on the same level as him. It's just very hard to say that because there's just so many. I mean, you have The Rock and Austin, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, even Triple H who runs it. He put the work in, so he is one, but I don't think he's a top one yet. I consider him one of the greats, but not status. That's just my 2 cents.
I'm gonna go to Honey just to give Councilman a second. Honey,
Yes.
do you agree with John Cena? Oh, actually, no. Let me back up. I do want to ask you one more question, Courtney. So who would you consider the greatest, and what's your measurement of that?
Ooh, greatest. Greatest. I would probably say for me, and this is kind of really hard to say, and also when it comes to Roman, I think I'm gonna have to go with Summit. You might have to get back to me because I have to think about this one.
So, but I guess the other part of the question is what is your criteria? What's your deciding factor? When you look at considering somebody the greatest, what do you base that off of?
I think for me, outside of championship material, it's definitely paving the way for wrestlers and not just in one promotion, but traveling all over the world, traveling in the independent scene, being well respected, and also shifting because a lot of people are going to know you from wrestling, but also tapping into other different fields. Like, for example, a lot of them tapped into like entertainment, television shows, some of them had their own podcasts, and really just paving the way because back then people knew of just wrestling. They knew like it was just a wrestler. Like you can't do these other things. Now you see some wrestlers that are venturing out and doing other things. So for me, if I had to pick somebody that was on that level, I have to go with one of my heroes, Chris Jericho. And the reason I say that because it's kind of crazy. I know he's looking at me, but I do because I actually watched him when I was a kid and also watching his documentary and seeing the work that he did wrestling in Canada, Mexico, Japan, even wrestling in Japan now from the Tokyo Dome and seeing the work that he put in. That's really hard to say. And of course, he had like rivalries with The Rock, memorable rivalries because, and the one thing that I will say with Roman that I kind of noticed a little bit improve on, Jericho always knew with promos because that's very, very hard to do when it comes to wrestling. And because you're telling a story, you're doing a promo, and you're also doing all these things and making sure everything puts in one. And also making sure that you're well respected. And also he ventured off outside of the wrestling world. Like, of course, he has his own podcast. He has his own band. He does a lot of things in the entertainment scene and also been dabbling into producing his own movies. So that's who I think in my mind when it comes to that specific criteria. And also leading the way because when he first came into WWE, a lot of people did not think he was one of the guys because of his size. People did not really respect him or liked him. Like, even Triple H said it. He didn't like him when he first came on the scene. But he had to put the work in time and time again, and he proved it. He backed it up with his promos. He backed up with his wrestling. And even now to this day, he really put the work in for 30 plus years of wrestling. So
All right. All right. Well, that answers my question in terms of what I think whenever there's the question of who's the greatest, et cetera, there are a lot of people who have different criteria for that. So I was very interested in your criteria on that. Honey, your thoughts. Do you agree with John Cena? Do you believe that Roman is the greatest of all time? And if not, who would it be and why?
Well, I will say this. I feel like, I mean, being that we are in a time of, with internet and access to our devices and things like that, things of that nature, the term GOAT has been around for a very long time. The term GOAT should only be applied to certain individuals who have earned and deserve that status and worked for it. Anybody can be one. But when you're talking GOAT and you're talking guys like Hogan and you're talking like San Martino and you're talking like Macho Man Randy Savage and you're talking, and you can go down the line. You can go from that era into another era. You have your HBKs, your Triple H's, your Stone Colds, your Rock. All of them are GOAT. We could sit here and argue about who's our top 5, top 10, Mount Rushmore, whatever. The question is, do I agree with John Cena and is Roman Reigns? Can Roman Reigns be considered the GOAT? And if you will indulge me.
I'm the tribal chief around here. Yeah, you see me, the tribal chief. That's right.
I absolutely do. You guys know, every Friday night, for a whole summer, all we did was acknowledge the true tribal chief while this Timu tribal chief was running around trying to claim thrones that wasn't even given to him in the first place. It was bestowed upon him by greatness. Rest in peace to the Anoa'i brothers. There's no way you're not going to call this man Roman Reigns a GOAT, considering the fact that he has done all he has done since 2012, being part of the Shield, just because even though Seth was the breakout star, Roman just had that it factor to where he can be considered that guy, the face of the company, the John Cena's, your Randy Orton's, your big guys. He was the guy. He was acknowledged by The Undertaker, who was acknowledged by many others. He was handcuffed to a damn post and got dog food and all kinds of shit thrown on him for it. All while still being the first man in the arena, being the hardest worker in the room, being a great leader to the locker room in the back, both for the men and the women. And he's just known to be a very class act. He's a very classy guy. He's all about family. Not to mention doing all of this while living with leukemia for 11 years. And you went into remission. You gave up your title. You were a selfless champion. You gave up your title because you knew you had to take care of your health. You went away for a while, did what you had to do, came back, reinvented into a whole new kind of Roman Reigns that we never expected to see. But it was the Roman Reigns that I had been waiting for since 2012 when he stepped in the ring. I am definitely going to sit here and agree. Something that John Cena and I don't normally do, but we can agree on the fact that Roman Reigns can most definitely be considered.
Can no man knock me out? I'm tired of being humble. I'm tired of letting people think they got a chance. The tribal chief is head and shoulders above everybody. This is my show. This is my camera. I run it all.
Period. And that is my story, and I'm to it.
Councilman, do you agree with John Cena? Is Roman Reigns the greatest of all time? And if he is not, then who do you think is and why?
I 133% believe and agree with John Cena that Roman Reigns is the greatest of all time.
Not 134%.
It's
33.
33 just I don't know why. 33 just sound better. And no disrespect to Jericho. Jericho is a GOAT. He's the greatest B-list wrestler of all time.
In his own right. In his own right. In his own right.
In his own right, he is a GOAT. Not taking that away. He is a GOAT. He has had his moments, but can we just, if you could indulge me, as something Professor asked Courtney, what criteria do you give to the GOAT? For me, can you tell the story of wrestling without this person? There's no way you could tell the story of wrestling without the tribal chief. Impact, pushing the needle. He had a whole shirt, needle pusher. And that wasn't just to sell shirts. Let's not forget, Cesaro never had a championship match. Never had a world championship match until Roman Reigns. We did not see the true potential of a star in Montez Ford until he came across the tribal chief. Kevin Owens sitting in the back of catering until he came against Roman Reigns and the Bloodline. 3 matches in a row at a pay-per-view. Mick Foley Jr. would not be as hot as he is if it were not for the tribal chief. Yeetropolis would not be standing had it not been for the tribal chief. And think about it. I'm just talking about the last 5 years. Can we talk about going to the big dog era? There are only so few that have beat Undertaker at WrestleMania. And it wasn't Chris Jericho. It wasn't John Cena. It wasn't Stone Cold. It wasn't Randy Orton. It was our tribal chief. Not to mention, this man is in one of the greatest factions of all time. Sierra, Hotel, Indio, Echo, Lima, Delta, Shield. People want that group to come back. Because of him, all 3 of these people, there was at one point, all 3 of these men were champions at the same time in different companies.
And countries.
Yep.
This man tied his own story into leukemia and changed his whole aspect of how people felt about him. This man has never had to seriously use his nepotism to earn people's respect. This man went toe-to-toe with John Cena, one of the best on the mic. John Cena literally told this man, I am here because you can't do your job. And now fast forward to Club Shay Shay. This man is calling him the greatest of all time. We have never seen anyone put on a show with Brock Lesnar better than Roman Reigns outside of maybe Kurt Angle and Eddie Guerrero. And look how long it took before someone got the respect from the beast incarnate. And then if just not even throwing out the biggest accomplishment, one of what I believe the 4th longest reigning WWE champions. That goes down in history. Stone Cold is not that. Brock is not that. The Rock is not that. This man has solidified himself as a pillar. And then not only that, you've brought your entire Anoa'i family here to run Rec Shop for the next 20 years. We would not have Jacob. We would not have Solo. We would not have main event Jey Uso. We would have not really had the Uso Penitentiary if it were not for Roman Reigns.
We wouldn't even have the final boss without Roman.
Cody Crybabies would not.
Crybabies.
their champion if it were not for Roman Reigns. And let's not even forget coming back during the pandemic era in a time where, well, let's face it, even before then, WWE was in a slump. No one was really watching it. NXT was really holding that place down. That was one of the main reasons we were tuning in. And then came the Tribal Chief. From hell to back, from back to hell, coming back, this man is the greatest of all time. And I'm not putting it in a top 10, a top 5. I'm not finna, we're not, I don't, that's a whole nother discussion for another time. Mount Rushmore, any of that. But if for someone to say that this man is not one of the greatest of all time, they would really have to let me know what you don't see in this.
Your favorites think that this man is the greatest of all time. It's no shade.
This is your favorite wrestler's favorite wrestler.
Favorite wrestler.
And I acknowledge my Tribal Chief. I acknowledge.
So there's plenty I could add to that, but I won't. Simply because you guys have done a great job of dialoguing about it. I do think that's a great discussion, though, and I do think that what Roman Reigns has accomplished is something that absolutely has to be acknowledged. And
100%.
yeah, I'm gonna, because I what I don't want to do is elongate things, because I have plenty I can say about that to systematically prove that. Because this is what I will say: there was a time where I would not have said that Roman Reigns was the greatest of all time. But I think I know based on empirical evidence that there's no way I could consciously say that and say that he's not and feel accurate about it, just based on where we are in a pro wrestling environment. And yeah, I'll do that on a different day. What I can tell you though is that Monday night was the last night, at least for a little while, that we would see this man, Pat McAfee, in the space of commentary. He had a very nice send-off by WWE. And of course, he's going away to fulfill his duties in the college football world with ESPN. But it didn't take long for us to find out when we'll see him again. I feel like Babyface. When will I see you again? Well, I'll tell you when you'll see McAfee again. See Pat McAfee in January when Raw heads back to Netflix. So that's going to be interesting on a lot of fronts, because if you think about how self-censoring to some degree McAfee has had to be on the USA Network, I just can't imagine what McAfee is going to say on Netflix when it feels like the gloves are off. But he will be reunited with Michael Cole. Now, this is what's interesting to me, because they had announced that Michael Cole would be moving over to SmackDown, where he'd be working with Wade Barrett. And then Corey Graves was coming over to Raw, where Joe Tessitore would be. And so that may be the case from September through January. Once we get to January, I don't know what that looks like. So it'll be interesting to see more changes in the world of commentary for WWE, but definitely the commentary teams are smoking hot right now. And, it'll be interesting to see what happens in these next couple of weeks, quite frankly, because I don't believe that Joe Tessitore is coming until September to WWE. So I don't know what they're going to do in these next couple of weeks leading up to that, but we will certainly find out sooner than later.
I think they said Booker T might be doing double duty. I'm not sure how
really.
True. Yeah, but Booker T might be double duty.
Okay.
Maybe they could pull like a guest wrestler kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think it will just be for next week, because next week is the last week of August, and then they'll move into September. And Boza says that Tessa Tour starts on Labor Day, which makes sense because that'll be right after Bash at the Bash in Berlin. I almost said Bash at the beach. Special Little Nobody says, when is your NXT debut, Professor? It's just a matter. That's very kind of you. That is very, very kind of you. I appreciate you saying that. What I can tell you for sure is that we are about 30 minutes away from AEW Dynamite, the first Dynamite happening across the pond. And I'm intrigued by this because we've got 2 title matches, which could impact All In. A rematch from last year's All In, as Timeless Toni Storm will once again defend the Women's World Championship against Saraya. That should be interesting. The Continental Championship will be defended tonight. Kazuchika Okada against Claudio Castagnoli. Then from there, a trios match. This should be interesting. Darby Allin and FTR taking on the Elite. Then we also know that there will be a contract signing between Mercedes Moné and Dr. Britt Baker. And there will be a face-to-face encounter involving MJF and Will Ospreay. All of that happens in about 30 minutes from Cardiff, Wales, over in the UK. I'll be very interested to see what the crowd looks like, the energy of the crowd, all of those kinds of things. I believe they are also taping Collision tonight as well. So this way Collision will air on Saturday. Then, of course, Sunday will be the all-in pay-per-view. And I'm guessing Friday we'll kind of have an all-in conversation and, give our predictions and all of the other fun things surrounding that. What a fun show. All right. Here's how you can find our amazing panel who we always have a blast here on the show. Courtney, how can people get a hold of you on the socials?
They can follow me on Instagram at CourtneyJ11, and I'm also on Twitter with the same handle as well.
Awesome sauce. Councilman, where can they find you?
Keeping it classy today. You can find me at Will Pharaoh, PHARAOH, on everything, Twitch and all socials, and YouTube as well.
Super cool. And honey, how can the people find you and all that you're doing?
You guys can find me here Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays with the WWT Live crew. Every Friday we do our Honey Night SmackDown watch along. We are back for this week. This Friday, it is going down. We got a lot to cover, a lot going on already for SmackDown. And you can find me TikTok Wrestling with Honey, Facebook Wrestling W Honey, Instagram Wrestling with Honey, and the Wrestling with Honey podcast on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends.
Awesome sauce. By the way, I want to shout out our sponsor, of course, All Caribbean Wrestling, who next Saturday will have Jam Slam on August the 31st, a huge event happening in Kingston, Jamaica. Yours truly and TK will be there providing commentary. That should be a lot of fun. It should be a great weekend there in Kingston, Jamaica. Of course, you guys can find me at Bonnerfied across all the socials. I just dropped a fun video for you guys to check out, talking about All In 2025 and giving some suggestions in terms of how AEW can pack out Globe Life Field next year for All In. So you guys can check that out on my socials. You can find my commentary work with All Caribbean Wrestling on their YouTube page, also with the Nightmare Factory and Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling on their respective pages on YouTube. You can also find my work with IWE and Southern Honor Wrestling on IWTV, and my work with Ashe Wrestling at AsheWrestling.com. Of course, all cool things are happening here at Women's Wrestling Talk. You can check us out on the socials at WWTalkpod. Always fun content there. So check that out, including clips from the show you might have missed, very memorable moments. I'm sure there's a clip or two from today's show that will make its way to those socials. So check that out. Check out the website, www.talkpod.com. Lots of great interviews happening there as well. Shout out to all of you in the chat. So many of you. Of course, the mayor is there, Dylan and Jeffrey.
Yeah, the mayor is going to show up for a debate.
I thought today was supposed to be the debate, and I was like,
yeah,
okay, maybe I got it wrong.
Complete false advertisement that I had reshared, and the mayor didn't even show up for debates.
My suit was pressed and ready, and the mayor was like, I never agreed to that. I'm like, oh.
Oh,
Okay. But we'll end on the positive note, though. We need a new hashtag. We need NXT Bonafide. They special little nobodies that got me hooked now. We need NXT Bonafide. Yo,
I like that.
we will not stop till we see the professor on commentary at NXT.
Wow.
This
Wow. Okay, y'all are trying to wipe me out here. I'm not going for it. But listen, thank y'all for that. And if y'all want to do that, by all means, that's wow. Let's see. Jeffrey, Sendiel, Boza, all the good people, JT. I know I'm missing people, so forgive me if I've missed your name, but thank you all for joining us. I appreciate all of your kindness and the kind things, and that hashtag. I see that. That's crazy. Wow. All right. We'll be back here on Friday for another great show as we get you ready for SmackDown and all things AEW and everything else in between. Thank you guys for joining us here at WWT Live as part of Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling network on the planet. Peace.
Thanks for joining WWT. Don't forget to like us on all social media platforms at WWTalkpod. Like and subscribe on all video and audio platforms, like yesterday, my G. And check out our website at www.talkpod.com. Thanks for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling network on the planet.